Hello everyone, a very warm welcome to you. My name is Nick and you know what's coming up if you've seen any of the others in this sort of series. We're going to have a look at the next chunk of Spectrum games we've reviewed on the channel, numbers 351 through to 400, so strap on your seatbelts, here we go. And we start with Costa Capers, the third in the Technician Ted games, and I think it's the worst one of the three. It's still okay, but there's a tune playing all the way through, and some of the collision detection is brilliant, but if you like the first two Technician Ted games, you'll probably get a bit of fun out of this. Rather large obstacles, and I don't think the levels are designed quite as good as the other ones. So, you know, Technician Ted the Mega Mix, and then Costa Capers as the third one. If you're into platform games, I would try Jet Set Willy before any of these ones. 4K Race Refueled, an upgrade from 4K Race, which came out in 2005, published by Paolo Ferraris. A really cool game, this one. Was part of a competition in 2005, which won the minigame competition, just using 4K programming. And if this come out back in the day, it would have been a huge hit. You have to go through 7 checkpoints before the time runs out, overtaking cars as you go. No championship mode, unfortunately, so it is just checkpoints and nothing else. THUNDERCATS, this wasn't supposed to be a THUNDERCATS game first of all, it's just taken the license quite late on in the day. It's a very frustrating game where without a cheat mode on, you're spending most of your time dying all the time. I was a big fan of the cartoon THUNDERCATS, Mumra, Lion-O and all these lion friends. The game I'm not such a big fan of. One to play just once I think, and then there's not much replay value of this. Also come out in the Commodore Amiga, which is poor also. Ghostbusters 2, graphics of this are really good. It's hard to get off the first level though, where you then be controlling the Statue of Liberty, going down, shooting at various ghosts and stuff. I found this quite frustrating. I'm a big fan of the Ghostbusters franchise, but these games, Ghostbusters 2 in particular, is not great. I like the original Ghostbusters because it holds a bit of nostalgia with that speech in it, but this one doesn't really build on it, and not many people would have got past stage 1, I don't think, but people in the comment section like it. A really good platformer, Dynamite Dan. What's really good about this is the amount of things moving on the screen. There's different kinds of music when you pick up certain objects. Dynamite Dan has to collect different bits of dynamite to blow up a certain thing. Comes down in an airship, and this will keep a kid going for quite a while. It's very tricky, so you probably need the cheat on as you go along. Again, I would prefer Jet Set Willy, the king of all the platformers, but if you're looking for an alternative, you can't really go too far wrong with this one. Airwolf from the TV show. The helicopter controls quite well, there's a little bit of inertia there. This game is incredibly difficult though. A lot of these games based on TV shows from the 80s were quite poor. This is one of the better ones, but it is flawed in the difficulty. But having said that, let's not put how bad I am away from how the way the game plays. Some people would have had a bit of fun on it, but it's not something that I will go back to any amount of time. Talking about crazy games, it's Snail Racing, but it's a betting game. You can bet on any number of snails with a certain stake. As soon as you run out of money, that is the end. I did find this kind of funny, actually, in a strange sort of weird way. Sometimes a game is so bad, it's actually good, and this was one of those. You might remember when we reviewed this the first time round. Since that point, we reviewed Derby Day, which is another betting game, which I think this one was based on, because this came out quite late in the day, 1995. The sequel to Dynamite Dan, which of course is called Dynamite Dan 2, is pretty much more of the same. There's bigger levels, there's more to explore. It looks very similar. You could walk off the set of Dynamite Dan 1 onto Dynamite Dan 2. I'm not sure how well this did sales wise, because there wasn't a Dynamite Dan 3, which is a shame. Other Dan games there are is Dan Dare and Disco Dan, but they're not related to this whatsoever. Again, Jet Set Willy, king of the platformers for me. This is a pretender. Airwolf 2, complete departure from the first Airwolf game, which isn't a bad thing, but something like this doesn't really add up. You're in a helicopter flying through space to destroy aliens. I think they just tagged the Airwolf name on the end of it because no series of Airwolf, no episode of Airwolf were you fighting aliens in space in the Airwolf helicopter. So what's going on there? But the playability of this one is a lot better than the first game, so I'd pick this before that. And what it comes down to is a shooter. Rampage from the arcades, come out on absolutely everything. This, enjoy playing it on the Game Boy Advance and the Commodore Amiga. The Spectrum version is good. The controls could be a little bit better, but there is a lot moving on screen at the same time. It's to 1 to 3 players, which is pretty awesome. Basically demolish all the buildings across America and then get on to the next stage. I think you know how Rampage works, so if you've got a Spectrum and want an arcade conversion, this is one of the better arcade conversions because quite a few of them, quite frankly, were rubbish. Rocky is a boxing game, originally called Rocky, but they didn't have the Rocky license, so quickly had to change the name to ROCCO. It's okay, but I prefer Frank Bruno's boxing. The problem with this game is, it is a bit random how well you do, and the opponent you're fighting always looks identical on the screen, despite it's a different fighter. It does get boring quite quickly. There doesn't seem to be too much finesse there, but maybe that was the way I was playing it. It's nowhere near as good as the Rocky films, that's for sure. Blue Thunder, it was a TV show in the 80s. It was a rival of Airwolf. I think this one plays a little bit better, but it's a bit more basic than that. Basically, you control this helicopter, which looks a little bit like Budgie the helicopter, over enemy terrain, and you must destroy a base at the end there. A little bit frustrating. Once you get used to it, it's okay. It reminded me a little bit graphically of Harrier Attack, so if you're a fan of that by Durrell Software, you'll probably like this one as well. Blue Thunder, helicopter action. SCALEXTRIC, if you was a kid you probably had a SCALEXTRIC set. What's good about this Spectrum game is it's split screen. There wasn't too many of those back in the day. Problems with it though, the playability isn't great. You race against the computer AI, which would have been good back in the day, but the slightest of touches and your car will explode, which essentially means whoever's in the lead first of all, they can weave around. If you crash into them, they automatically win the race. But it's okay for a racer. It isn't the best around, but you could waste a bit of time on that. Space Racer, I don't know what's going on with this. The sound is white static noise. It's okay. A kid could imagine that they was going through like Star Wars on a speeder bike, but the frame rate isn't brilliant. It's a little bit monochrome, which I let it off being a Spectrum game, but you quite quickly get eye ache, and I wouldn't recommend playing this for any decent length of time. Different stages to progress. You must shoot everyone in front of you and then finish in the top 3 racers. Dr. What? Now this is a takeoff on Doctor Who, so they couldn't actually be ripped off by the BBC for copyright. You control any one of 5 doctors. There's Dr. Y, Dr. When, Dr. What. They're all in different locations. You can change what doctor you control, and you must, by collecting items, solve a puzzle and then escape. You can get in your TARDIS, which is not called a TARDIS in this, to actually solve things and to get to other places and visit the other doctors. Dr. What? Avoid it if you can. Turbo Boat Simulator, I really like this one. There's quite a lot of simulator type games out there. The boat does tend to spin on a sixpence. Essentially what you must do is going through different canals is collect different packages. Once you've got all the parts of the package, you then go to the next stage. Submarines will come up in the water to try and blast you away, but just ignore them. So you're a bit of a James Bond character on canals. That's pretty much it really. Basic gameplay, good graphics, plays really, really good. Blind Panic, this comes as a part of a cover tape I believe, possibly was your Sinclair. It's nice and colourful, but it's frustrating too, going up and down ladders, as a lot of games were back in this day, going through gateways and escaping this maze network. You can control this lunar jetman type fellow with a gun, and the aliens will come thick and fast, and they will regenerate, and eventually they will end up killing you. There's not too much to say about this, but good to have free on a cover tape before, as I say, most of them you just would have just copied over. APB Points Bulletin from the arcades. Music's quite good on this one. This is the 128K you can see playing. You control Officer Bob, which must control or clear up all crime in the city, so it's like a precursor to Grand Theft Auto, one could say. The car is really, really difficult to control. Although I could see it was clever, I wasn't a huge fan of this because I didn't think the playability was quite there. But it's a good game in its own right. APB All Points Bulletin. TURBOMANIA, this game comes second to 4K Race, which we looked at in that 2005 minigame competition. You control a Formula 1 car, you go around the whole of the track, making it go blue, as you can see there. Once you've done that, you get on to the next one. Some really cool mini games in this, a little bit like Pac-Man, but instead of ghosts, you're being chased by cars. Avoid them, and then you're on the road to victory. Quite addictive, this one. If you can track it down, you've got a Spectrum, then I would recommend doing so. It's a really nice game. Shame it didn't win that competition. A Bounce Panic, like the original Panic, but in this time you just bounce up and down on the enemies, going up and down ladders as before. There are slightly different stages, but it's pretty much revolves around the same thing. And what's good as a kid, when you got off certain levels, all the colours would change, so it wouldn't just stay the same colour each time, which gave you a sort of impression you was getting somewhere. And with a kid's imagination, quite often you would bring a lot more of the story to the party than was actually said in the cassette tape. Boom! Don't panic. Wanted Monty Mole. Yes, in this 50 games we started looking at the Monty Mole series and completed them. There's quite a few, and they start at Wanted Monty Mole. Basically, he's wanted because he's gone into a coal mine, he stole coal that didn't belong to him, and apparently that's a criminal offence for some reason. I don't know why. But good old Monty, a big series of games which have sold quite well. I'm not sure it sold as many as Dizzy, but it's up there with the amount of games that they produced for it, so they must have been quite popular. 3D Pac-Man, you might not know too much about this one. It's Pac-Man, but it's 3D, go figure. The first stage is quite good because there's no ghosts around, which gives you an idea of the feel of the game. There's power pills as well, and then on the first stage there will be a ghost that comes after you and increasing each one. What's really cool, on the left hand side you can see a map of where you are and where the ghost is as well, to try and keep an eye on him to get one step ahead of the game. Really nicely coded game, and early 80s as well, so nice to see. Another TV tie-in, it's The Fall Guy starring Lee Majors. You must do a variety of stunts on different levels. Quite often it would involve jumping, and quite often it's tricky. You see on this first level there's old Lee Majors there jumping from carriage to carriage, avoiding those birds. As he does that, if he does that, he qualifies to jump on different things. Very tricky. I'm not sure why you'd come back to it, and curiously enough it plays the old Formula 1 music rather than the Fall Guy music, which is very, very weird. Monty is Innocent, not a very good sequel to Wanted Monty Mole. This time you're controlling a stoat, yes, a stoat, who must rescue Monty from prison because he's been arrested for stealing all the coal. Now I'm told the same writers did this as Jack and the Beanstalk, which was probably one of the worst games of all time on the ZX Spectrum for my money, and I can sort of like tell that in the sort of like graphics that the Jack and the Beanstalk people were involved. Fortunately, they weren't involved for any of the other Monty Mole games, which we'll come to in this bit. The Dukes of Hazzard, another TV tie-in, and an abysmal game. You control the General Lee over different stages. You must avoid getting shot by a helicopter, which never actually happened in the game. A yellow car would come on, which is the police car, either controlled by Boss Hogg or Roscoe Pico Train, and you must jump over cars as well. You don't see Daisy Duke, you don't see any of the characters. It didn't really need a Dukes of Hazzard license on it at all. I don't know why it did. Yes, I do. It's to sell more copies of the game. A classic game, this might be in a lot of people's top 5s. It's Chaos Battle of the Wizards. It's turn-based, and you must destroy up to 7 wizards, either AI controlled or human controlled, by selecting different spells. They might be successful, they might not be, and then kill everyone else around you, and the winner is the last wizard standing. It's one of those sort of games you could be playing for absolute hours and hours and hours, but it is heaps of fun. There's a few sequels which you haven't quite come to, maybe that's something to do. Monty on the Run, we got back on track now after that terrible Monty is Innocent. You must select numerous items out of a list to try and help you on your task so you can escape abroad. This time the mole can somersault for reasons unknown. He was somersaulting before Dizzy did it, and he was somersaulting before Nose of Yesod. So this is original somersaulting stuff. You can get flattened by these big pillars that come down, and that's similar in all the games, but for me this is probably the best of the Monty games in the series. Battle of the Planets, nothing to do with the kids' cartoon, although that's what it's trying to be on the cassette cover. Really liked this game back in the day, but you'd have to put this game in the genre of 3D Star Strike and Star Wars, all sorts of those. It's not quite as good as those, but it comes quite close. You must destroy ships. There's a Death Star sort of thing there, so it could have been Star Wars, and you can go and land on that as well, or at least shoot things on the surface. A nice game, but nothing to do with Battle of the Planets. Bubble Buster, a nice one. This is a precursor to Pang. People might not know that this one existed, so years before Pang even was thought of, there was this game, Bubble Buster, so that has influenced Pang. How about that for you? Frame rate isn't brilliant, but this is early 80s. You control a man in his green trousers, and you don't get many games where you get to do that. So all you green trousers bubble busting fans, this is the game for you, Bubble Buster. Hooray! Our WIEDERSENN Monty, the next one in the Monty games, plays pretty much like the others. There's not too much different here to distinguish it from those games. Not as good as Monty on the Run. You don't select items at the start. If you liked all the other Monty games, you'll probably like this one as well and have to add it to your collection. But to me, it's just another run-of-the-mill sort of games. I would put Dynamite Dan and Dynamite Dan 2 ahead of this game quite safely. But it does have trampolines. A mole on a trampoline, maybe that gets extra points there. Turbo Cup, this game was hideous on the Commodore Amiga, it's slightly better on the Spectrum, there's nice car sounds, would have kept a kid involved for quite some time. One criticism is, it's very easy to spin the cars around the corner unless you're doing the exact right speed. A kid might have got bored after a little while, but it's back in the day Turbo Cup by a French outfit, Logiciels, who did a few games. I wanted a little bit more really, but this is pretty much what you get. All the cars are monochrome, the same colour, could move a bit faster. Frenzy, that's a Berserk clone from the arcades. It's much better than ZX Berserk, so if you want something quicker, then this was the one to get. It came out a year after ZX Berserk, I believe. It's nowhere near as good as the modern day one, or fairly modern day one, Horace and the Robots, which is also a Berserk clone, but back in the day, talking pure retro, if you wanted something that moves quite quickly and represents everything there, then really go for Frenzy. When you hang around, the boss turns up to kill you, so all those things are there. Next up is IMPOSSAMOLE, which is the last of the Monty Mole games, if you don't include the Christmas one, which you're yet to come to. We might come to that one at maybe Christmas. So yes, if you've got any memories about any of these games we're going through, then comment about that or check down the original reviews. Always love hearing from you. Give those old reviews a bit of love, give them a bit of life. This one graphically is a bit different to the other ones, almost as if someone different has done it. The scrolling is okay, so it's not flip screen this time, it's scrolling screen, so it's good they tried something different. A really basic game, Spectrum Invaders. I've always got a soft spot for these sort of games, and there's absolutely hundreds of them about. We've reviewed a few, but this is a white background as opposed to black backgrounds. I always prefer the black backgrounds, but white, not really spacey. And also the characters coming down do look a bit like Horace, some of them, so I've given it extra points for that. Spectrum Invaders, track that down if you want a basic Space Invaders type game. Next up is one for you trainees. Yes, it's Southern Belle, where you get to drive this steam locomotive. There's lots of keys and instructions for this one, more than what you get in a flight simulator. It's all about getting the train moving and stopping at the right stops, depending on what challenge you do. If you're really into trains, you could be playing this for hours again. Some of the scenery is tried to be reflective of the London to Brighton line. You do go past Battersea Power Station at one point, and that's cool as well. Next up, we've got Airborne Ranger. First of all, you must parachute out of this plane, or put bombs in the plane, and then, on the sort of like run and gun, a bit like Commando, go out and find certain bits and pieces. I didn't really get on with this game, only because Commando is a lot better, but Airborne Ranger might be in a few people's top 10s. I thought it could be a bit better. So exploring trenches, finding chests, and then getting to the next stage and not killing yourself, which is always good in any game. It's a Frogger clone, it's a Road Frog. I think it does Frogger quite nicely, but the controls are a little bit slow, so at a critical point when you hit a button the frog might not move, which ruins it a little bit, but it is Frogger and I don't think you could have done too much with it. The river is just logs, you can't see spiders getting you or frogs getting you, or any turtles like the original Frogger game, so they've come as basic as they can. There's not 4 lanes of traffic to get through, there's just 3. It is very basic. Again though, it's of an era, it's Frogger. Zigzag, this is a really nice game, a curio that maybe a lot of people haven't heard of. By shooting bugs in this 3D maze, which is animated really well, a nice effect with the walls there, you must shoot the bug to get a code and then explore another bit of the maze, because he'll give you a number. There we go, so you see a green bit on the screen there. We must head to that and that unlocks the next bit of the maze. Really nice game, I really enjoyed playing it. Moves quicker even than 3D Pac-Man. Really worth tracking down if you've got a Spectrum or an emulator. YIE-AR Kung Fu, the original was brilliant, the sequel not so brilliant. Where the first game moved really fast and you had a variety of opponents, this one is a bit slow. The characters are bigger, but it hasn't got any music there to speak of. You must walk past 3 screens avoiding the stars and then beat up this guy at the end. This one is Po Chin and you're Li Yang. So if you're looking for a Kung Fu game, try out Exploding Fist or the original YIE-AR Kung Fu. It looks like they're trying to milk it a bit. XEVIOUS, 1 to 2 players. I was the only player there, as per usual, so I'm going to use a bit of the screen. But you control this guy in a nice 3D maze environment. Through a space station, you must collect certain bits and pieces, avoid the robots, and get to the exit. No, not quite like Doom, but it's on the way there. Fun game, also come out in the arcade, so this is an arcade conversion. I always like a game that begins with the letter X, because that's superficially cooler. Pinball games, they do vary in quality. Now, although the ball physics on this game is quite good, Pro Pinball or Zipper Flipper as it's sometimes called, I don't know what's going on with these flippers. They're not traditional flippers, they're just some weird thing, and I've never seen anything like that before in a digital pinball game at least, and that ruins the enjoyment for me. But essentially you must destroy all those coloured squares on the right there to activate the fruit machine to get the jackpot. I didn't do it in the review, it's way too tricky, and the flippers, I can leave them. Scuba Kids, no, it's not Scuba Dive, this is Scuba Kids, where going through different screens, you must rescue your friend who's been kidnapped by someone for reasons unknown. But when it gets down to it, it's all about collecting keys, avoiding nasties, and shooting stuff with bubbles, and then getting to the door at the end. I don't think the kid's worth rescuing, but anyway, I suppose you better do it, because that's the nature of the game. Scuba Kids, I really like playing this game actually, well put together, nice idea. Platoon on the ZX Spectrum 128K looks really nice, impossible to do without a cheat on it. You control 5 of your Marines and you'll spend a lot of time dying. I didn't know really what I was doing, I was just walking endlessly in the jungle, but if you do complete this bit you then get to a village, but it's way too difficult to be enjoyable. I want to enjoy it more, the graphics are good, the guy's a bit see-through, but Platoon, a few people might like it, got on with it, I didn't get on with it. XEVIOUS, quite a lacklustre shoot 'em up. You shouldn't always look at the arcades, but I do that to see what the conversion is like. There are much better shoot 'em ups out there. This isn't abysmal by any means, it's just a little bit boring. I don't know why I want to keep going back to this if they had other games. It's ticking all the numbers, but it's doing the bare minimum to be described as a shoot 'em up really. Good music every now and again, but as I say, I was left a bit underwhelmed. Yes, Prime Minister, based on the TV show, mainly aimed at adults, political satire. You must go through the day of Jim Hacker, who's the Prime Minister, going to different meetings, dealing with all your civil servants and your party members. And if you're into the TV show, you'll probably get more out of this, a bit like the Adrian Mole text adventure, which you haven't reviewed yet, but if you're aware of that, it's a similar sort of thing. TV show fans will like this. If you're not into the TV show, you might struggle a little bit. Oh Mummy, I'm told it's not quite as good as the Amstrad CPC version, but I quite enjoyed it. It's quite basic gameplay. Basically you control a man going around this maze. There's white dots every time he leaves a path there. You must encircle the squares to get the treasure in the middle. Essentially we're tomb raiding and avoid those yellow things going around the side, and once we've done so, hit that green X there that you can see, and then it's on to the next stage. I found this really calming for me, perhaps that's why I liked it. Good stuff. Earthshaker, this is a Boulder Dash clone which come on a cassette tape there, so you would have got it for free. It's nice and colourful, but a bit late to the party, and I think that's maybe why it was given away free. Scrolls really well. I prefer it to the original Boulder Dash, but it's a close thing, similar sort of thing. And I think the level design is quite cool, but there's quite a lot of Boulder Dash clones. It's nice to see this is one of the better ones. They're frustrating as always when you get a boulder smash on your head when you're so close to completing the game. But there you go. GB Air Rally, this was a nice idea. You control this stunt plane going across America, and its checkpoints involved. By crashing into other planes it costs you time, of course, as it would in the real world, but going through different checkpoints before the time runs out. You can go up in your plane, go down in your plane, and every so often you'll get greeted by some sequence awarding you special prizes. Lacks a championship mode, which would have elevated it to greatness, but it's okay in its own right. Xeno, this was a surprise hit for me. I really loved this one. There's not much to it. Basically, there's 2 counters, one for you, one for the computer or a human player, but you must knock this puck on some strange alien world into the other goal, and that's about it. But it's fast and furious, it's customizable how long you have for your shot each time, and it reminds you really of a very early speedball, perhaps, that sort of idea. But the pitch scrolls well, it's doing a lot of stuff, there's a lot of mechanics going on, it's mad and it's stupid, so it ticks all the boxes. Now, Lode Runner, this is a really, really good game. The first version I played was the wrong version, so I gave it a bit of a false review, but when I played the correct version, I saw that this was fantastic. You control this stickman, who's a lot of character for a stickman, collecting this gold which has been stolen by aliens. Once you've done so, a ladder will appear, which takes you off the screen, and you go on to the next one. But lots and lots of levels to play. You will be playing this for hours once you get used to it. You won't be doing it all in one sitting unless you've got a cheat mode on. Good stuff. So I hope you liked having a look at those. That was Spectrum Games reviewed on the channel 351 to 400. Yes, it's getting a bit crazy now. Next stop is 450 and then 500. Woohoo! Yep, if you haven't already and you're liking the channel, please consider subscribing. I couldn't do it without you watching it. Until next time, take great care of yourself and a very fond goodbye.
Goodbye.